Okay, just to test the volume out here. Everybody can hear me okay? Just real quick, just for my sake, has anyone not gone to a session before this one since Neil deGrasse Tyson went on? There's several people that haven't, so, all right. I can say that Neil deGrasse Tyson opened for us. Is that great? I like that.
So, thanks for coming today. This session is enhancing the total customer experience through data visualizations. It's probably the least creative title of all of the sessions here. So thanks for overlooking our lack of creativity, and if you've realized you're in the wrong session and you're going to go to hot, dirty sets or something like that, now's the time to step out. So we're Jenny Beasley and Steve Scales. We're from EMC, and over to you.
In case it's not clear, I'm the Steve Scales part of the equation, and that's Jenny, as I like to call her. I do that all the time. I got on phone calls when I started working with Jenny right away, and first couple times that we get on a conference call, and I'd say, "Hi, Jenny, how are you?" And she'd kind of giggle, like you guys just. And after a while, I'm thinking, I said, "Am I the only one that does that to you?" And she says, "No, I hear that every once in a while." I said, "Do you know why people say it like that?" She said, "Because it's funny sounding." I'm like, "No, have you never seen the movie Forrest Gump?" She said, "No." I'm like, "I've never met anybody that hasn't watched Forrest Gump." So I gave her homework. I gave her the DVD and said, "You need to go watch that movie." And then, since then, she now understands why people do that to her. So if I break into Forrest Gump, you'll know why that is.
So, I mentioned we're from EMC. If you haven't heard of EMC, or you're not an EMC employee, I see a couple in here. EMC are best known for data storage hardware. We have about 60,000 employees across 400 sales offices in over 80 countries, represented either directly or through partners. And over the last 10 years or so, EMC has been making a number of strategic acquisitions. So some of you may have heard of RSA for virtual private networks, security fobs, VMware, virtual desktops, and Pivotal. So anyone here use Greenplum databases at the back end of their Tableau?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So this unique federation of companies that are free to work independently or work together really position EMC for that journey towards the third platform. So if you're not familiar with that terminology, let's start way back at the first platform, which is back to terminals, mainframes, mini computers, really old school, back when Steve was a kid. And so that's the past. We're operating today in the second platform. Hundreds of millions of users, tens of thousands of apps, PCs, LANs, internets, a world that we're familiar with. And the third platform is the future. It's the convergence of four interdependent trends: mobile, cloud computing, social media, and big data. And big data, I assume, is why you're all here today at the Tableau conference. So this is massively changing the way we interact with technology, the way the regular user on the street interacts with technology. It's not just a business thing anymore. People are probably right now tweeting, "Hey, I'm in Jenny and Steve's session at Tableau conference." So this huge trend is influencing the way we work. It's influencing us at EMC, and it's influencing the way EMC partners with other organizations to provide solutions for our customers. Let's take a moment to talk about that boost in data growth. So EMC commissioned IDC, a research organization, to look at the digital universe, to count how many bytes of data there are in the world. And in 2013, there were 4.4 zettabytes of data. I'm not even going to attempt to give this number right here, but that's how many bytes a zettabyte is. So 4.4 zettabytes of data in 2013. We're predicting that by 2020, there will be 10 times as much, 44 zettabytes of data. And that was before we saw Neil deGrasse Tyson's session about the LSST, the telescope, collecting 30 terabytes of data per day. So when you think about that exponential growth in data, it's probably going to be even bigger than that in 2020. And if you're a visual person, which I'm guessing you are, let's imagine that 44 zettabytes, or the 4.4 zettabytes of data, first of all. If that were represented in tablets, those tablets would stack 2/3 of the way from here to the moon today. In 2020, it would reach 6.6 times to the moon if the data was represented in tablets. That's a lot of data. EMC's own personal journey in the data world, EMC were founded in 1979 as an office furniture company and then kind of quickly shifted around into data hardware. So it took from the early 80s right through to 2005 for EMC to ship their first exabyte of data. Another 5 years before we shipped our first exabyte of data in a single year. By 2011, we shipped our first exabyte in a quarter, and then 2013 shipped our first exabyte in a single month. So that really shows that exponential growth of data. We expect it to pick up even further, especially if we have that telescope as one of our customers, right? So I work for the Total Customer Experience Group within EMC. And if you see other EMCers here, we might not know each other. I mentioned 60,000 employees. That's a lot of people. But Total Customer Experience covers the entire organization. So it's looking at how we can improve things for our customers, strategically align ourselves to customer needs across every aspect of customer interactions with us: sales, marketing, pre-sales, post-sales, technical support, everything. And we've had to adapt as we go along. So traditionally, you would understand how customers worked with you through surveys. And with this digital world, those surveys migrated from paper surveys to online surveys. And now we're able to capture customer sentiment from social media, from other sources of information, divergent sources of information, and we want to merge all of that together to get a true understanding of what our customers expect of us, whether we're meeting those expectations, and then get that information into the hands of the right people to influence strategy and drive improvements. A little technical challenge there. Thanks, Steve. Mm-hmm. So, taking data from all of those various listening posts, and some we capture automatically, some we grab from things like social media, others are sessions like this where we will speak with a whole bunch of customers and someone's scribbling notes in the corner and we convert that into a database. That all goes through our business analytics as a service engine and delivers this end-to-end customer intelligence. So we're going to go through a couple of those examples today. And of course, all powered by Tableau. So the session today is broken into two parts, and the second half of the presentation is around predictive analytics. We have a customer advocacy team within the Total Customer Experience Group, a small team with a huge global responsibility. And we talk a little about how we scaled our customer advocacy team through the use of Tableau with an algorithm and with customer 360 views, and we go into a few examples there. Before we get onto that, we're going to cover EMC World, which is our version of this Tableau conference. So we have around 13,000 customers come along to our sessions in Vegas. It's an opportunity for EMC to showcase new products, anything exciting that's going on in the organization. So there's loads competing for customers' attention. Just like here, I'm sure you were all trying to figure out which sessions to go to next, and ours came out on top. So thanks again for that. So at EMC World, we're competing against all of these other EMC groups to get customers into our booth. And our vice president came to us this year and said, EMC World, we need to make it spectacular. I want it to be interactive. I want it to demonstrate how we're using customer feedback to drive improvements in the organization. And I want it to be
cool. he actually used that word. I'm like, all right, I'm in then. Cool. Tableau, cool. We can do that.
So, We came up with this concept of interactive dashboards on touchscreen TVs using Tableau. So customers would have access to these screens. They would come along, touch the buttons, filter them in a way that made sense for them and that spoke directly to them. So you can see the filters just down here. We allowed the customer to filter on their own geographic region. If they came from the Asia-Pacific area, EMEA, the Americas, they could look at data just in their section of the world. We allowed them to filter on the product or products that they owned. So our customers are very diverse. Some are software only, some are hardware only, some are a mixture of everything, some are high-end, middle-end, low-end. So that filter allowed them to look at a similar customer base to themselves. And then selections on a particular area of interest. So the area of interest is this one right here. We break our customer experience group into different ways we allow customers to engage, enable, and evolve with us. So it had some case studies there. Now this one was interesting because it's not a traditional use of Tableau. We wanted to get so much information into that particular dashboard that we ended up using PowerPoint slides and JPEGs. And so customers would click through these selections and see a static image with metrics on it. The others are more traditional uses of Tableau. And this is what the booth looked like at EMC World. So here's our touchscreen TVs, which customers could step up to and interact with. So at this point, Steve is going to do a demo of some of those dashboards at EMC World with a few little cool tips and tricks that we use to make that work and interactive.
So we'll peel back the curtain and we'll look behind. I apologize as I'm walking in the light if I'm blinding anybody with the glare from my head. All right. So I'm going to get out of this and we're going to start with that first one that Jenny was talking about.
And I mentioned this isn't a traditional use of Tableau, but we wanted to use Tableau for this so that across those 4 screens they had the same look, feel, color scheme, etc.
So the customer could come in. Now, wherever I'm clicking with the mouse, they were actually pushing on the screen and touching it on the screen. But they could choose any of these topics, and as they would choose those topics, they would get a different slide. But then the question was, okay, we wanted to use a slide and have it interactive like that, but how do we do that in Tableau? And we scratched our head for quite a while trying to figure out how to do that. In fact, I had a full head of hair before I started scratching my head on that one. And we figured it out. And basically what we did is we used the actions for the dashboard. And I'll show you how we did that. So if I'm clicking on one of these, I go into the actual sheet that we have for their choices. You can see that we have all of their choices here. And then if I look at the data behind that, every one of those choices corresponds to a letter. So we had a different letter for each one of those choices. And then what we did is we used the actions on the dashboard. And so, whoops, let me go to the dashboard. And you can see here's the action we used. And what we built in that action was a select. And when they selected one of those, it would go in and find a file on the hard drive, and we put that in the URL to go find that file. And every file that we had was named EEE underscore, and then we used the choice, which corresponded to that letter. So each slide we had was EEA, EEB, and then when we were able to click on it, they were able to show that file. So that's how we got around it.
So Steve, it's not just a simple C:\/ there.
That's true. So if you look at the URL, when we actually did this in Vegas, we just had a C:\/ and everything worked fine. And then a couple months later, we were showing it, and this part broke. And we thought, uh-oh, Tableau made a change. But we went back to 8.1. We tried all the previous versions. It still didn't work. And what we discovered was that the browsers had changed. So now the browsers give a different URL. So if you're thinking about this and you want to go back and you don't have to write this down, I'll show you a quick tip on how you can find what that URL is. If you go into Firefox and just go in and type in C:\\. When you hit return, it'll take a second, or 2, or 3, or 4. Or when you're in the live audience, it'll take longer than that. It'll come up with that first part, and you notice that some of these are forward slashes, not backslashes. So you just copy that, and then after that last forward slash, you start using backslashes after that. So one word of caution here, though, is this only works in Firefox. It doesn't work in Internet Explorer. So a month from now, when you're going, oh, I remember that tip I saw, but which browser was it that I'm supposed to do this in? Just ask yourself, what does the fox say? And then you'll know that it's Firefox. So because he was concerned he would forget something, Steve wrote a script for his part of the speech today. And in his script right now, he has Jenny laughs hysterically along with the audience and then wipes tears of laughter away after 30 seconds of continual laughter. And then I say, on that note, let's move on to the next dashboard. Yes, let's. You're naughty.
I'm going to get in trouble for that one.
All right, the next dashboard, this one was extremely popular.
This one was our crowd pleaser. This one drew them in because it looks so incredibly cool, and then we pounced on them and told them all about our total customer experience group. So Steve, just step us through it, please.
So what we're looking at here is a picture of the globe, and then we have those different dots on there. And what those dots represent are each one of our service engineers, the folks that go out in the field and they do our installs or upgrades or our repair work. And we took a snapshot from our scheduling and dispatch software program. And we said, show us where the location is. I'm going to step back a little bit so I get that out of the way. So we said, show us where the location of each one of those people are. And then with the software, our scheduling and dispatch software, each one of our customer engineers carries a mobile device with them. And they give us status updates throughout a service call. So when they get the actual message onto their mobile device, it will tell us that. When they start traveling, they'll click on Start Travel, and we can tell that they're traveling to the site. When they get on site but haven't started working on the product yet, we'll know that they're on site. When they start doing the wrench work and the repair on the box itself, we know that. And then when they're complete, we know that. So we took each one of those statuses and we made those the colors. So you can see up in the corner, it tells you which color stands for which status they're in. So this was neat just in the fact that we could see, here's all our service reps for this snapshot in time. But then what we did is we took that same snapshot every 15 minutes. And we did that for a 24-hour period. And you can see on the bottom is a bar, and that's the time from midnight all the way through to midnight the next day. And then we used the pages function so that we could play that. And we could see that we have the East Coast lighting up, and then the West Coast, and after it gets dark in the morning, early morning, that's when Asia lights up. And then EMEA comes online, and as they go dark, our East Coast starts back up during the daytime. Then the West Coast, and then as the United States goes dark again, then Asia lights back up and starts going. So we could see a follow the sun of how our service reps did across the country. And then they could walk up and they could say, if I wanted to see my specific location, they could go click on the page and they could zoom right into wherever their location. This is what most customers did. I want to see what's happening in my area, and they would click right down to their spot, and they could see the dots that worked around in their area.
Sorry? No, this was historical for EMC World, just in case there was an issue with internet connection, but we're able to do it with live data.
In fact, one of the VPs is talking about having this right on his desk so he can see it at any time, looking at it, see where all our service reps are. So
Steve, as we were preparing this for EMC World, I know our data underneath the geographic location here, our underlying data isn't as user-friendly. We call Asia Pacific APJ, for example, on the data. Can you step us through what you did there?
Sure, I can show how we clean that up. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to go into a more of a blank session of this. And you can see our raw data. You can see our raw data is here, and we have our theater. The WFM stands for Workforce Management. That's our scheduling and dispatch system that we pulled this data out of. And as Jenny was saying, we have different abbreviations, but that's not what we wanted to show the customer. So instead of having that, we pulled that out, and we created a group of that same theater. And if I open that group, we can see that inside we just took each one and we renamed it to how we wanted to see it. So we used the correct capitalization, and then we put the right words in there. So then, instead of using the main one, we used that group. And we'll take them all. And then we made that the quick filter. Let me pull that back up on top. And now you can see, instead of having the way it was in the raw data, we now have the nice clean names.
So Steve, I can see nulls and blanks here.
Yeah.
We want to get rid of those.
So when we said, all right, we want to get rid of those, we'll just go into the filter and we'll say, all right, let's just take those out. But when we do that, we just lose the check. And we had the customers able to go put those checks back in. So what we wanted to do is get rid of that word null altogether. So some of you may know this trick, but it was interesting for us. Basically what we end up doing is taking the original theater and putting that back into the filter as well. And then just choosing the 3 that we wanted and not the null. And then when we come over here, we can say show fewer options. And now our null goes away. So now we only have the ones that we want to see in there. And then because this was customer interactive and we didn't want them changing that, we would customize that and say take off that button so they couldn't change it. And then this is just my habit. I always go into the customize and show the apply button, which I like. So.
Which that was Steve's opportunity to say, this should be standard in Tableau. I love that apply button. So you've got the t-shirt on there, dude. Great. So this was really cool. We did the same thing with the products over here to give customer-friendly versions of the product names.
I actually have a question about the thing where you have it's going through each minute of data. I have not let that.
Oh, so we are just about to jump onto
You mean that bar that goes
the
across the
bar.
top?
When you click on the button, it goes through each
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Steve's just coming onto that.
So you want me to show you how that works? Well, that's like a magician showing his magic tricks. But I like Penn and Teller. They're my favorite magicians, and they're always showing people. So in the spirit of Penn and Teller, I'll show you how that works. So if I take just a blank sheet, one of the data points that we have is called hours and minutes. So if I drag hours and minutes over to pages, I can see that in here, for every time we took that 15-minute snapshot, we had a whole bunch of records. And if we started at 3 a.m., it was a whole bunch of records at 3 a.m., and then a whole bunch of records at 3:15, and then a whole bunch of records at 3:30, and so on. So to make the bar work, though, we had to make that a decimal point instead of the way it's visually looking to us when we see time. So the way I did that was created a calculated field. And I wanted actually to name that calculated field the same as this hours and minutes. But if I go in and say hours and minutes, and I just save that, it's going to give me an error. Say, well, you can't do that. You already have one of these. So my workaround for that is just to add a space. Now when I save it, it will save that. Then for the formula, I took the date part and said, okay, grab the date part, and we want to take the hour from the time that we took the report, the snapshot time, which is this report time EST. Okay, oops, sorry. Yep. Thank you.
His mindset's changed already.
That's right. And then we added, and we did that same thing with the minutes. So I take the date part again, I pull the minute from that. And then because I want it in the decimal of the hour, I divide by 60. And then I'm going to say OK, and it saves it. But now you see that I have my original hours and minutes in my dimensions, but I also have an hours and minutes down in the measures now. And if I look at my raw data, I can see that the 6 o'clock is 1845. And then when I slide over and see my new calculation, it's 18.75. So that's the biggest key to this. Once you get that calculated field, then all you do is drag that calculated field up to the column. Now, I'm going to do that in a right click because I don't want sum. And because it's a whole block of the same time, I can choose several of these. I can use average or min or max, so we'll just use max. And then, when I hit my play button, I get my little bar going across. So I'm very close to what I want, but my hours are a little off here, and so I need to do a little bit of formatting. And the other thing that it does, if I pull it all the way to the end, it doesn't quite go to 24, because when it gets to 24, that's actually midnight, which is back to 0 again, right? So I don't want this gap here either. So the few things that I did is I edited the axis, and I said I want this as a fixed from 0 to 23.75, and I want to change my tick marks to 1, so I get 1 for every hour. And then this is where I would also change the title. So we want to say, time, and this was Eastern Standard Time because we're a Boston-based company. And now I've got the bar that goes all the way across, and it ends at the end. So now if I loop that, I can see the bar goes across, and then if I get it to the end, it hits the 24-hour mark and then starts back over at 0. And then it was just a matter of doing some formatting to change the background to black for us so it matched the rest of it, and then change the fonts so that they were white and bold. And we now have a time bar that works. So that's how it was done.
Should we go back to the script?
No.
Jenny, wow, you are awesome.
Well, thanks. Shucks.
So, back to the presentation.
Yeah, good idea.
We're off script now. So, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
So that was our how did they do that. There were some cool tips and tricks in there. And this slide we won't go through. That was just in case Steve got too drunk last night and didn't show up to the session today, and I had to talk you through it.
In case somebody slipped me a Mickey last night.
Why would someone give you a mouse?
No, a Mickey, like a roof. No, never mind.
Anyway, on to the second half of our presentation, predictive analytics. So everything we do in our total customer experience world is all about turning data into insight, into action. That's our mantra. I mentioned before the data that we capture was traditionally surveys, and these days it's so easy to send out surveys. Customers are just swamped with surveys. The value of the data that you get back from those surveys, they're kind of ticking 5s, everything's good, and it's not as detailed as you would get from a conversation. It kind of negates the point of the survey if you can't trust what's coming back. So we wanted to figure out how can we evolve away from surveys, look at the data that's already out there, look at all of this data we've got on the customer in the first place, and then try and get more proactive, identify customers who we think are going to be dissatisfied, turn that relationship around, turn our strategy around to meet those customer needs. So the section that I'm going to talk about now, we ran a pilot in the second half of last year in Southeast Asia. We have a person on my team who's based in Singapore, and she went out and interviewed 27 customers in 6 countries in Southeast Asia at sea level to really dig down and get insight into where they felt EMC should be strategically positioned. And as a result of those interviews, we introduced 55 key business improvements. So there was some really great insight there, a kind of don't sell to me, sell with me, help me plan my strategy, help me plan my journey to the cloud, sell me solutions, not product silos. So all of this kind of stuff, which was so valuable. Our executives loved the feedback we had. We passed that feedback on to various groups throughout EMC. 95% of those groups said it influenced their strategy in some way. So our execs loved the feedback that we'd got from this. They loved what we'd done with it. They said their challenge to us is how do we scale it? And that's where Tableau comes in. So our plan to scale it was, first of all, to use analytics in Tableau to identify which customers we should focus on. The 27 from Southeast Asia, we'd relied on our account reps saying, this customer's going to throw us out unless we turn things around. And we wanted to find a way to kind of automate how do we pick those customers that we should really be paying attention to. Once we've identified the customers, we then want to build an account profile or a customer 360 with all of the data that we already hold on this customer. We don't want to survey them on satisfaction for technical support when we've already got information on how they were experiencing it, were things delayed in getting resolved. We've got that information already. So pulling together all of the data behind that, briefing a group of executive sponsors across the organization who could then, armed with that data, go out and hold those C-level discussions with our customers, throw it into a database, and that comes full circle and feeds right back into our next Customer 360 and our next analytics. So the algorithm, this is just a kind of rough version to show you how it all fits together. But basically, we're taking key indicators. So the obvious one is revenue over here, revenue over the previous 3 years, because we can't just look at most recent revenue. Typically with IT, the customers have a much longer tech refresh or buying cycle. And then future revenue, if we know it. Sometimes we get nuggets of information about a customer is about to make a big purchase or about to do a tech refresh. We have information on Net Promoter Score and transactional satisfaction for some of our customers. That factors in, especially if there's been a significant jump. So if the customer is ticking along nicely, not at the top of the list, not at the bottom, but relatively happy, it's good, we want to improve it, but if a customer has been really happy and suddenly dropped, or if a customer was really unhappy and suddenly went up, we want to understand the reasons behind that trend so that we can do more or less of whatever we were doing right or wrong. We also look at risk rating. So if a customer is exposed to issues and likely to experience problems with our products, so maybe they're on old hardware, old code releases, they don't have their devices connect into us to tell us when something is wrong. Those are flagged up as well because these are customers who are likely to experience an issue in the future. We want to kind of turn that around and help them be more proactive themselves. And this program is relatively new, we're just rolling it out, but eventually we will look at their time since last TCE visit. So when did they last have one of these executives go speak with them at C-level? Because if we can do that on a regular basis, it will ensure that things flow more smoothly, the customer feels valued by us. So the great thing about this algorithm in Tableau, I'm sure everyone's familiar with the top N parameter. I would have senior vice presidents call up and say, I'm going to be in the UK next week. I've got time to visit 2 customers. Which 2 should I pick? So with filters in Tableau and with that top N parameter, I can just go plug in the UK top 2 customers, show me in the list. The algorithm makes a weighted score based on all of these factors, and the customer with the highest score, which we call our TCE rank, comes to the top of that list. So it's super quick and simple to identify which customers. This is a pretty new program, so we're constantly evolving the algorithm, we're constantly evolving the way we work. If I speak to people in sales, they say revenue is the most important thing. If I speak to people in technical support, they say customer satisfaction. So ways we're looking at enhancing this is we span the customer journey map across buying, deploying, using, and servicing. Those are all of the points in the customer life cycle with us. I intend to break this algorithm down so that if I'm a salesperson, I can just look at the buy phase of the cycle, say which are the top 2 customers in the UK in the buy phase, which would weight the revenue portion more heavily than, say, the transactional satisfaction portion. Similarly, if I was in tech support in the servicing phase, I might want to weight the transactional satisfaction much higher than the revenue. So we're constantly looking at ways to tweak this to make it more relevant to various parts across the business. So when we talk about the customer 360, you can see here the buying, deploying, using, and servicing. We looked at all of the data that we capture across each part of that customer life cycle and threw it all into a Tableau dashboard that has, or several Tableau dashboards, that has a section just focusing on buying, deploying, using, and servicing. So let's take a look at that now. The core report looks just like this. And every customer that I speak to, or every account team that I speak to, wants context. They don't just want to know that this customer has a Net Promoter Score of 6. They want to know, how does that compare to other customers in that country or that theater?
So Jenny, just to pause you, wouldn't it be better to show it live?
Oh, we can't do this one live because it contains customer data. So the snapshots in the presentation here strip out all of that.
Okay.
But it's a super cool dashboard. You'd love it live. So the blue section here is at theatre level, the red section here is at country level, and then the green section here is at customer level. And you can make those comparisons. So just at a glance across those 4 phases, buying, deploying, using, and servicing, I can see that this customer is sort of relatively happy buying, and that's not too far off the theatre level. Their satisfaction is going up in servicing, reaching towards that theatre level, but it dropped drastically in deploying and dropped drastically in using. So I can drill into those areas, try and understand, does the data tell us why the customer might be dissatisfied? And if it doesn't, then we can brief the executive who's going to go in and speak with that customer so that they can really hone in on that area and prompt the customer and get a little more detail around what we're doing wrong there, where we're not meeting their expectations. So from here, if we just build this out, first of all, we cover Net Promoter Score, which I assume everyone's familiar with. Is the customer likely to recommend us? And we can make comparisons across other customers in that same industry and in that same location. We then look at revenue, of course. So over here is 9 years worth of data. And this particular customer, visually you can see immediately, they have a 3-year buying cycle. So year on year here, the quarters are displayed in red, green, yellow, and blue. So quarter 4 looks to be their busiest, but they have this 3-year tech refresh cycle. So we would know that if we went to speak to them soon, they're right at the beginning of that new cycle where they're going to ramp up their purchases with us. It's a great time to get in with this customer and work with them on their strategy for whatever's coming next in their business. Moving over to the deploy phase, we look at what's in their install base, any changes in their install base. Are they shifting over from mid-tier to high-end storage? Are they shifting over more to virtualized cloud computing? Just an idea of what's going on there, and then their satisfaction with deployments. Did they go in on time? Were there delays? Was it over budget? Coming into the using, this is where we have an absolute ton of statistics. So it was really difficult to figure what to put to make all of this fit into one graph. This is one of my favorite ones. It's around our drive suppliers. So EMC work with a number of different drive suppliers and look at the quality of those drives. So the blue line here represents EMC's annual replacement rate. The red line here is the target annual replacement rate, And the dark green line is the customer's annual replacement rate, so their experience of how many drives would be replaced per year. And the pale green lines either side of that are upper and lower confidence bands at 95%, which I saw in Tableau version 9 is an automatic feature you can build in those confidence bands, but we calculated this manually to put those. So the thick green line sits somewhere between those confidence bands, and as the install base grows, those confidence bands gets closer together because we've got more data, we can be more confident about where that average lies. So
Jenny, with this one, is this the one that you were showing the customer in Japan?
That's right. So this particular dashboard, we work with a huge customer in Japan, go out to meet with them on a quarterly basis on product quality. And we had been providing this data in 55 pages of PowerPoint slides, going through every different drive supplier combination, being prepared with all of that data. I went to Japan in June and demoed this live tool to the customer. That was our first rollout of the tool. And we could just flip through any supplier, any drive type, and everything dynamically changes. It shows them how many drives they've got, how many have been replaced in the last 3 months, what their annual replacement rate is over time. And because it's a Japanese customer, I'm not fluent in Japanese, I wear a translation piece in my ear, but I'd taken it off to go stand up and deliver the presentation. And we had EMC reps on one side, the customer reps on the other side, and the lead or head guy of the customer representatives stood up, banged his fist on the desk, and said something, which really threw me off track, and I had no idea what he said. I finished the presentation and went and sat back down. One of the account team came over afterwards and whispered in my ear. He said it was amazing. This is the future. This is, throw away the PowerPoint decks. He loves this. So that was a relief. I thought I'd done something wrong.
And to get a reaction out of Japanese culture like that, that's not typical of them.
That's right. That's why I thought something was badly wrong.
Yeah.
I'd already made a faux pas that I'd handed out business cards before my presentation, and they laughed, and you're supposed to do it afterwards. So all sorts of things I learn on these trips. So also on product quality, we've got things like the number of cumulative runtime hours for our products versus the volume of replacements of those products. So up in this corner, it's really bad. The products haven't been out in the field for very long, but we've had a lot of replacements. Down over in this corner, it's really good. They've been running for years without issues. So it's so simple to show that in a visualization and understand that if the customer isn't satisfied, but they've got stuff up in this corner, that could well be influencing their opinion on our using or product quality phase. And then on the servicing phase, we've got a ton of the usual kind of metrics. So customers contacting us via phone, web, chat, or are their devices dialing into us? What kind of volume mix is where? What's their time to restore looking like? How many are closed within 24 hours? Escalations, all sorts of metrics. Are we meeting our service level objectives? So all of that gives us insight into what's influencing those customer ratings of us. And as a result of this program, these interactions with our customers, the algorithm that I spoke about, these customer 360s, and then that face-to-face interview where we try and understand the customer's strategy and drive improvements as a result of that, it's gone down really well with customers. They're saying that they think we're really taking care of them. They really appreciate our efforts to truly understand what's going on and to adjust an organization as large as EMC to meet their requirements. So if you want to learn more about who we are and what we do, we have our Vice President, Carolyn Muse, has a blog where you can read about the total customer experience at EMC. We have a video on customer advocacy, a video of Steve from EMC World presenting his dashboards, and it's so popular there that the cameraman has to push through the crowd to get to the touchscreen TVs at the back of the room. And email addresses here. So, any questions at this point?
Bueller?
On the Customer 360. So we're a data organization, and it was a struggle. We're going through an exercise at the moment to try to move all of that data to a central location so that it's much easier to access. But I think the beauty of Tableau is you can mix stuff from a Greenplum database with stuff from Excel, with stuff from SQL Server, and throw all of that together. So we understood that there were things that we needed to do. We understood we're actually going through an exercise to restructure some of our data into cubes that allow us to more readily access it in Tableau dashboards. It is a struggle, but I think identifying the need is the first thing, and then the steps to correct the data structure come
But I think
after
that's
that.
one of the things with Tableau allows us, even though we're not there yet, we want to get there, we can still have good output. We can put stuff in front of the customer without having to worry about all our data being exactly right and in the format we need. We can do some of that now.
You mentioned earlier in your platforms, you're saying like now we're in social media. Have you guys tried to attempted to mine anything from?
Yeah, we use a third-party program called Sysomos, which mines some of the data. And then also from some of our surveys, we used a text analytics tool that just looks at sentiment across a sentence. So we're relatively early in text analytics, but yeah, it seems to be doing a good job so far, and I think we'll continue to evolve with those.
Do you provide these on a regular basis to your clients, like through a Tableau server or something like that?
We are just starting to investigate that, so not these dashboards, but some on customer risk mitigation. We've developed them, they're ready for customer facing, and we're just trying to figure out how do we provide these to the customers with keeping the data secure, etc. So maybe next year, if you all give us terrific feedback on this session, we'll come do a session on that. Any other questions?
How did you validate the TCs for the valid indicator of customer satisfaction?
So it's not an indicator of customer satisfaction quite so much as these are customers that we would want to talk to. So they might not be satisfied, they might be really satisfied customers, but they've gone through a journey that went from very dissatisfied to very satisfied. So they're ones that we want to understand what influenced that turnaround in sentiment.
How do you validate that?
So when we talk about bringing up, say, the top 5 customers in the UK or France or something, we can work with local account teams who give us what they feel their top customers are and match against them. So that's what I was talking about, where everyone has their own perspective. If you come from the sales background, you're more focused on buying than that overall picture. And we're in a fairly unique position that we care about everything overall. So I think we're going to break that down into the 4 components, and that will allow us to better validate, but then we're still concerned with that overall as well.
Was any other tool or technology considered for the testing prior to use Tableau?
They were just simple touchscreen TVs, 32-inch. We hired them from somewhere in Vegas, and it all worked perfectly. We used Tableau client rather than server, so each connected to its own distinct Tableau client laptop. We didn't provide mice. They just went and hit the touchscreen TV.
It was while they were setting them up, we had a couple hours, and I was in the back, and each PC was connected to each screen, and I was in the back behind the scenes getting everything squared away and put up, and the company was coming, and they were mounting the monitors as I was doing that, and I saw them roll out the 4 monitors, and they had like 3 of them up, and then I heard a kaboom, and I went, uh-oh, and I looked back, and that monitor had slipped off their cart and just smashed on the ground. I was like, no, we have
Panic
4,
time.
we need 4. So luckily they had a spare, they could go back and get one. I see a question back there.
Is Tableau integrated into Salesforce.com or EMC? Are there any plans to do that so that Salesforce can interact with this?
Are you an EMCer? Oh, so no, it's not yet. So the question was integrating Tableau with Salesforce.com. So I haven't worked with any units really that are using Salesforce.com that would benefit from the dashboards that I've created. I know that there's a lot of other EMC users using Tableau. Wendy might know some. So it's possible.
The second dashboard, the customer-centric dashboard, was it available to the customers?
No, that's internal use only because it's absolutely everything that we hold on the customer. But we do make some information available to customers on a more ad hoc basis.
The question was more around was the Tableau dashboard in this entire setup, was it even part of it available to the customer externally?
Yes, some parts are available to customers externally. So now, as I mentioned, the customer in Japan, we're providing stuff in packaged Tableau dashboards rather than packaged PowerPoint slides. When it makes sense to do that, it gives the customer a more interactive experience. We can just throw everything together and hand it off, but not the entire 360-degree view.
So you mentioned that you've done some analysis on predicting dissatisfaction. Are the metrics contained in your various dashboards the operational metrics that are actual factors of dissatisfaction?
Absolutely, yeah. So there would be, things like, did we meet our service level objectives? Did our service request get handed over X number of times between different people using a follow the sun model that after a set period of time, satisfaction drops off? That kind of thing. So yeah, those are all played in and you can kind of see how things link up.
That Japanese customer who loves Tableau, you're providing them with regular business for them to look at.
That's right.
But you give them the package workbook and have them use Reader to.
That's right, yeah. Okay, so let me do a quick plug. Wendy right here in the room is doing a 3 p.m. session in room 609. So go check out Wendy's session. She is way more technical in some of the stuff that she's done, and she's been using Tableau 7 times as long as Steve and I. So she's a whiz.
Absolutely.
May not be actually correctly, but how is the sort of the relationship as we have more performance challenges between Tableau and EMC? And I'm asking because I've not used it, but I know we have some EMC hardware and software. Are there data connectors into Greenplum?
Yes, there are. So in Tableau, when you connect to a data source, Greenplum is under pivotal Greenplum. So you can just see that and pull it right in. You're prompted for the username, password, and server details.
How are you marketing or advertising these dashboards internally to the company for users?
So certain users who would need the dashboards, we're providing them a kind of quarterly update on here's what we're using, here's what we're doing. For some of these, they would just be a very specific audience. So the dashboard that I talked about with the executive saying, I'm going to be in the UK next week, I've got time for 2 customers. It's really only used by the advocacy team when the exec contacts them saying, who should I go speak to? So it doesn't so much need to be shared with a wider audience, even though it's a really great tool and it's there.
Is there a plan for sharing wider?
Sharing, are you EMC as well? So Wendy runs a data visualization summit at EMC. The next one's coming up in Santa Clara. And as a result of that, we share work that everyone's working on. And yeah, you kind of get more insight into what's going on. Great. So
Okay.
don't forget your feedback forms, folks.
Yes.
Another
Thank you,
survey.
everybody.
And thank you.
Appreciate it.